Now, I'm no stranger to Kero Gunso. I actually bought this model kit some time ago and never put it together, but I do love the manga, and it's incredibly funny. I love the characters and the design, and it's all very interesting. But I also really love Robot Spirits figures by Bandai. These are some of the best mech figures that I own, and I own several of the Evangelion line. So why not put these two things together, huh? And yes, the madmen have actually done it. Over at Tamashii Nations, they put together this awesome Kerorobo UC. As you can see, the packaging is very similar to the other Robot Spirits figures, and this one is actually listed as the first in its number, K number 001. Keroro number 001? Yes, it would seem that there are a line of these figures. From what I can understand, there's only 3, and they're of the main characters, well, the main frogs, I should say. Now, obviously enough, this is a real figure. There is the holographic Tamashii Nations logo there, Tamashii Nations again, Kero Gunso, as well as the Bandai logo, so everything here is legit, and I'm surprised to see this happen. Mainly because Kero Gunso is a bit older now, and it's funny to see them making new figures, but I appreciate it nonetheless. But like I said, the packaging does look quite reminiscent of the other Robot Spirits packages, and that's great because these things are awesome. It shows different modes on the one side, and of course the back will show a plethora of poses. Everything's done incredibly clean, and it all looks great. There's plenty of text, but not too much to overwhelm you, and lots of great images of the figure itself. But let's get a feel for this thing, and if it really does measure up to the Robot Spirits quality. And there we have it. Everything's presented rather open and nicely, and there was no tape preventing me from getting into it, so I am happy about that. Though there is one problem so far. When I opened it up, this small star here, which is actually part of the crest on the front of the helmet of the robot, it was actually floating around in the box, and I heard it rattling around, and I think I even saw it detach, but that's not too big of a problem. There's a tiny peg on the back that will plug that right back in, so let's just do that now. Let's get this thing out of the packaging. He is just under 6 inches, just about. So he's measured up pretty decently to some of the other Robot Damashis. But I will say that his texture is far different. If you can't tell, he actually has a much more hollow and smooth finish, rather than the other ones having sort of a matte finish. And I actually really like that about the Robot Damashi line. But obviously enough, there are sacrifices made sometimes. And now, like many figures, posability is a big deal with this, so let's take a look at that now. Depending on the transformation that you have him in, he can tend to pose a little bit better in some forms than other, but generally it's actually pretty good universally. He's mostly peg and hinge joints, so let's start at the arm, where you can actually rotate his shoulder out and in, which is nice, and it can also at the body connect to a peg to go a full 360 degrees around his body, depending on where this piece is. Now, he also has a break in his forearm which allows it to twist. So you get a nice twistable pivot there, and that's useful, as well as this hinge can go up and down, which is good enough. And then the hand is on a simple ball joint which can roll around. One thing I really like is that the yellow part of his shoulder actually acts as another hinge, which can actually just go in and out just slightly, but it is appreciated and helpful in some poses. Obviously enough, his crest goes up and down on these little hinges here, which is pretty clever articulation, and I do actually like the way it looks. It just looks so much more important the way that it folds. Now, incredibly satisfyingly, this waist can go completely 360 degrees, a nice little peg joint there. Finally, his legs can go up and down, and they can go in and out just so slightly. His leg is also connected on another swivel peg right there, so you can actually move that about as you need to. His knee is a double hinge joint, which actually helps in his transformation because when this is folded down, you're going to want to twist this part of his leg, put his foot down, and flap up this thing. There's so much going on here, and it's incredibly well designed. This also goes up and down as well, which allows him to get a shorter appearance when you put him into normal mode. Finally, his foot is on a ball hinge, really. There is a small hinge inside of the back here, which allows it to go in and out, but also it can rotate around because of that ball joint. His articulation is pretty solid. Nothing here is too loose, which is appreciated in a figure that can transform. Now, over time, I do see this being a problem. It could potentially weaken over time, and I don't know if there's much that you can do to fix some of these joints, so just be careful if you do get this. Now, this is how he looks as soon as you open the packaging, and he looks great in this form, but just like any good mech, he has plenty of transformation available because he does come with multiple accessories. Most hilariously on the box here, this mode is listed as normal mode. This is listed as ultra cool mode. And this is listed as dangerous mode. So it's pretty hilarious. Normaru modo, ultra cool modo, and dangerous modo. So I mean, that's pretty awesome that he has multiple ways of displaying him, so let's go ahead and show you those different modes now. There's a bunch of different parts here where you can fold certain ones in, which is why that star falls off to begin with. You can then attach this other piece to the back, roll some stuff around, and I'm not going to show you the full transformation because I don't know how interesting that might be for you guys. And there we have it, a simple plain Jane normal mode. And I like this because it's far more representative of the character Kero Gunso, which is great because of course this is his robot. So yeah, and now it looks like the ordinary frog, of course with some extra accessories. The one thing I really like about this mode is how they made the shield use the star that was normally on the head crest, and it utilizes it to keep the shield together. It's a clever little trick, and I do like it because it helps it to be a bit more fluid. There's not as many holes or anything like that, and as you can see, there's far less red on this version because it's in normal mode and all of its power is yet to be unlocked, but we will get into that. The only thing that I don't like about this mode is that when you flip it around to the back, you can see a lot of extra kibble here. It's a little clunky and it doesn't quite look as nice, but what are you gonna do? You're probably going to be looking at this thing from the front, so maybe don't complain so much. And every great mech needs an awesome angsty teenager pilot, you know, a boy who's not quite ready to grow up and become a man and deal with the responsibilities of war. So why don't we put, I don't know. Let's put a frog in there. Yeah, throw Keroro in there himself. And man, is that just adorable? What a great touch to add on top of it, to put him right there in the pilot's cockpit. I love this. Those big silly eyes of his look all the more hilarious with those tinier ones of the actual character sitting inside. But let's go ahead and reveal Ultra Cool Mode. So the first thing we have to do is change the shield. That comes off simply enough, and what we're going to do is bring the legs of it down. Now the shield looks to have additional firepower in the front of it, almost like 2 more barrels on top of this. So let's plug that back into the arm. And you know, I hear you, this is cool and all, but what else can we do? Well, let's pan up just a little bit. But why angle the camera upwards? It's not as if this thing's about to get taller. Well, I suppose you could always do this. Oh my goodness. He now has a unicorn horn. Something like Unicorn Gundam, maybe? Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. You can fold the crest up and turn it into a horn, which this thing is just really begging to be yelled at by Gundam, but whatever, I still love this. But that's ultra cool and all, but what happens if we put this thing into dangerous mode? Dare we actually do it? Well, this is Figure Friday, so of course we dare. First, let's remove these accessories. Alright, doing great so far. Now, let's go ahead and change these arms a bit. Oh yeah, that's starting to look dangerous. Now, let's go ahead and turn the sirens on the knees around. Oh yeah, I feel the danger coming. But let's also open up these knees. Uh-oh. Yeah, this thing's really changing up, but what else could we do? Well, let's open up these flaps. Man, this thing's really giving off some serious heat. Let's open up the crest. Oh yeah, that just feels good. Oh, and let's go ahead and wrap this piece around too. Oh my goodness, the power is unstoppable. But let's not stop there. Let's split the shield in 2. We'll leave it in firepower mode and plug one into each side of his arms. But on top of those shields, let's give him additional plating. This is insanity. But you know what? I think he needs a better weapon. So let's take this gun right here and fold that handle right into the stock. Now, let's go ahead and plug it into this side here. Oh my. And finally, let's add a little plug on the end to just make everything nice and neat. My goodness, can this thing be stopped? Let's put Keroro back in the seat here and see how everything looks all together. Oops, silly me. We still have to plug the star back in. And finally, pull that hood down. And seriously, just how dangerous does this thing look? Honestly, there's a lot of small, subtle changes that really made this thing come into its own. I love this. It really does transform in such a grand way that you really wouldn't expect. When you take it from normal mode and flip back all the red parts and cover up all the cool compartments, the thing really does seem to transform and open up and really seem more dangerous in the end. I'm actually super surprised with how this thing turned out. It looks a lot better in practice than I imagined. I already liked the design from the start, but this thing actually works pretty well. The transformation is really not too difficult. Even with minimal understanding of Japanese, or none really, you can look at the pictures and pretty much figure out just what you need to do. Nothing was too overly complicated, and so far nothing seems too delicate, which is always appreciated in a figure like this. Now, hilariously enough, there's still more to do, but first we need to take this seat out of the cockpit. Then you'll want to take the gun and go ahead and flip it upside down and fold the handle in. That'll reveal this little peg here, and now you can plug these little plates into either side. Now with that done, you can go ahead and take the shield apart as well. Now with that done, you can take a thruster and plug it in on either side of these little holes. It's starting to come together. Now you're going to take both halves of the shield and plug them into either side. Now just go ahead and plug the seat on top of that. And finally, you can plug Keroro right into the seat. And you just made yourself a little bit of a speeder for him to ride around. It's hilarious how much you can multi-purpose all these parts. And the box advertises you being able to change the position of the thrusters and stuff like that, so you can pretty much display it however you like, really. And there's one last thing to look at. Besides what was in the box, I also received this with my figure. Yeah, this additional little box seems to be really just exactly what you see. Just a little figure of Keroro himself as a pilot. I don't know if this is included with all of them, but I do rather like it as an additional feature. It is nice. It makes me feel like I got something extra, even if it isn't. Hilariously enough, inside of the box, a majority of what you receive is this big brown lump of dirt. Yeah, this is the mound of which he is meant to stand on. But what you're really looking for is this little guy right here. This is Keroro himself, and he comes with a little stand that you put into his back, which then can just plug into the base. And that's it. That's all you get is a tiny little statue of Keroro himself, holding a helmet that would be comically too small for him to ever wear. I like it. It's cute, it's well detailed, and it's just a nice little added bonus. And that's going to do it. That's the figure, and that's pretty much everything you can do with it. And there is quite a bit. I do like this figure, mainly because it has multiple transformations, lots of great posability, the detail is really nice, and despite it not quite living up to the same legacy of some of the other robot spirits, I do think that it is a good figure of its own type. I don't think this is anything close to like what a normal robot spirit. Maybe I have a false interpretation of what these figures are to be like because I have the Evangelion ones and I hold them to such a high standard, but also this one is far cheaper than any other one I've ever seen. Well, I should say that only because I was able to find it in stock. Now, the Evangelion ones of course are far harder to find and thus they explode in value. Now, this guy is pretty reasonably priced for everything that he comes with, and you can find him still in stock on AmiAmi, and yeah, I even saw him when I was in Japan at the AmiAmi store. I was going to pick him up, but I said, you know what, I'm going to get him online, and he was even on discount. I think he's certainly worth a purchase if you like Kero Gunso, or if you just like weird mecha interpretations of characters. I do think this is an interesting way to depict the character. The detail level is rather high. This is a high quality figure, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's cheap or anything. It's just not quite the same finish and feel as the other Robot Spirits figures I have. Still, I did rather like this figure, so I'm actually going to give this a 9 out of 10. I was kind of afraid at the fact that he was so cheap on some websites and thought that maybe he might not be worth purchasing, but in the end, all of my fears were dissolved when I actually got the figure in hand and really enjoyed playing with it. So, yeah. I think an important thing about figures is for them to be fun, and this one surely is that. So with all that said, what do you think of this figure? Do you like Kero Gunso or do you like mechs? Go ahead and comment in the little comment box below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm always making new figure reviews, and like the video if you did indeed like it. I'm going to link another video on screen, and if you want to check that out, it does help the channel. Even if you've already seen it, please just give it a click. It does help me, and I always appreciate that. And with all that in the books, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have an awesome weekend, and keep on collecting.